You know who else is running? Brené Brown. She's running all over the country. Her TED Talk on the power of vulnerability is one of the most popular ever, with more than 39 million views. She discusses why we struggle with being vulnerable. Brown is a New York Times bestselling author, thank you very much, with 2 decades of experience researching courage, shame, and empathy. She hopes to spread her message about embracing our vulnerabilities in her new Netflix special, Brené Brown, The Call to Courage.
The opposite of belonging from the research is fitting in. That's the opposite of belonging. Fitting in is assessing and acclimating. Here's what I should say, be. Here's what I shouldn't say. Here's what I should avoid talking about. Here's what I should dress like, look like. That's fitting in. Belonging is belonging to yourself first. Speaking your truth, telling your story, and never betraying yourself for other people. True belonging doesn't require you to change who you are. It requires you to be who you are. And that's vulnerable.
Brené Brown joins us first on CBS This Morning to discuss. We were talking about you in the makeup room, Nora and I, and everybody else who walked in said, hey, you should hear something. See what you missed in the makeup room while we're getting our hair did?
I know, well, my hair takes so much longer to get done, Gail, that I am in another special room.
We were both saying, we watch it, we love. Because you said vulnerability is not a weakness, that we should show it. I don't know anybody, Brené, that wants anybody to know they're feeling vulnerable or that it's an asset to whatever is going on in your life. And you say what?
There's a lot of mythology about vulnerability, and the big one is that it's weakness.
Yeah.
And so from the data, the definition of vulnerability is uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. And I had this life-changing, career-changing moment standing in front of Special Forces, U.S. military, and I asked a question. Can anyone in this room give me an example of courage in your life or in someone else's life that didn't require uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure? And there was just silence until finally one guy stood up and said, 3 tours. There's no courage without vulnerability.
Yeah.
And we don't understand that vulnerability is the center of hard emotions, the stuff that we don't want to feel, especially at work. But it's also the birthplace of trust, love, belonging, courage.
You said you have to have vulnerability to be brave. Give us an example, because in your doc, you TikTok a lot of examples of vulnerability.
Yeah.
Like?
I mean, when we ask people, we've asked thousands of people, what is vulnerability? You hear everything from saying I love you first, the first date after my divorce, trying to get pregnant after my 2nd miscarriage, getting fired, firing someone, starting my own business. As a parent, the one that just killed me, I remember sitting across from this research participant, and she said, for me, vulnerability is sending my son to orchestra tryouts today, knowing how bad he wants to make first chair, and knowing he probably won't make the orchestra at all. There is no courage without being all in. If you can do something and not feel vulnerable, it's probably not that brave.
I think one of the hardest things in being vulnerable, which then leads to creativity, which then leads to success, as you say, the hardest part in taking that first step is fear of failure and fear of the critics. And I want to play part of this from your special because I think it really speaks to why many people never take that first step. Listen.
There are millions of cheap seats in the world today, filled with people who will never once step foot in that arena. They will never once put themselves out there, but they will make it a full-time job to hurl criticism and judgment and really hateful things toward us. And we have got to get out of the habit of catching them and dissecting and holding them close to our hearts. We gotta let them drop on the floor. Don't grab that hurtful stuff from the cheap seats and pull it close. Don't pull it anywhere near your heart.
Easier said than done.
Oh, God, for
me
too.
Don't take criticism and feedback from people who are not being brave with their lives.
We can't. And here's the thing. Here's what I've discovered. If you sum up all the research over 20 years, everyone wants to be brave. No one wants to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And that is the rub. That is what we'll reconcile our entire adult lives, is how do I be brave with my life, with my work, with my partner, with my kids, and stay safe and armored at the same time? And the answer is you don't. And the cheap seats are in 22 years of doing this work, I've never seen the cheap seats like they are today.
Yeah.
Oh, Twitter is filled of
You call them cheap seats, I call them haters.
Now, is there no part of bravery that doesn't contain the sublimation of vulnerability? Because when you talk about 3 tours, when you talk about the people who are championed for their bravery, some component of it often is they were fearful, vulnerable. They sublimated that and succeeded. I mean, is there no part of bravery that contains basically putting away your vulnerability?
I think it depends on how you define it. But if you define vulnerability as uncertainty and risk and emotional exposure, like we've asked probably 10,000 people that question. The week after I was with the service people, I went and I was doing some work with the Seattle Seahawks and asked them the same question. And they were just shocked for a second. They were like, no, every day on the field is vulnerable. So I think we can get used to being vulnerable a little bit. And maybe in that way, bravery becomes a practice and feels less scary. But I know for myself, every time I'm being brave, I feel scared.
Sure, and it's a common, performers talk about right before they go on stage to a part they've done a million times, they feel like they're about to die.
Yeah.
So it's there. I guess the question is for some people, if they turn inward to their vulnerability, they can get stuck in it. They can turn round and round. So what is the distinction between obsessing over your vulnerability and recognizing it, but being able to, or leap it in order to be successful?
You know what I think it is? It's a learned practice of discomfort. I have learned how to manage my discomfort. Physically, the physiology of vulnerability is real.
Right, that it's a sidecar to success,
It's
not an impediment to it.
I had a question last night that someone asked me in an audience, and she was kind of shaking and crying, and she said, I've got a book coming out, I'm scared to death, I don't know what to do, and this is how I feel. And I said, congratulations, this is what courage looks like.
Yeah. You said vulnerability is not about winning or losing, it's the courage to show up when you don't know the outcome. But this is one of my favorite things. You said, by choosing to be brave, you're going to get your beep kicked, you're going to fail, you're going to know heartbreak. Why would we make that choice? Who wants to get their butt kicked?
Yeah,
and who
or
wants
experience heartbreak.
And it's a good question, but here's the problem. Hard things are born of vulnerability.
Yes.
Heartbreak, fear, grief, disappointment. But love, joy, belonging, intimacy, trust, creating, innovation are also born. So when we armor up to block the hard stuff, that armor keeps all of the experiences that bring meaning to our lives away as well.
I may be quoting you back to yourself, but not taking a risk is a risk itself.
Oh yeah, and can you imagine? I mean, this is like how I end the special. Getting to the end of our lives and having to ask, what if I would have shown up?
Yeah.
What if I would have said yes? To me, that's more terrifying than putting myself out there.
That's why I say yes. Say yes.
Say yes.
Renee,
Brené Brown.
after watching it, I texted so many people. I texted couples who are friends of mine who I know are watching today. I said, watch this with your husband, your spouse. I texted so many people. So it's just Netflix, and you guys did a great job.
It's very,
Thank you
very,
so much.
very
It's
well
really
done.
exciting. Thank
What
y'all.
was great is Samantha Bee, when she walked in the green room and the two of them saw each other, they go, I love you too. And Samantha said, I just watched your special, it's so good. There's Samantha Bee. I love it when girls come together and say, yeah, you're good,
Me
you're
too.
good.
Yes.
It was a very nice moment
Cheering you
between
on.
the two of you. Brené Brown, thank you. You can watch Brené Brown. It's called The Call to Courage, on Netflix. You can get it right now after CBS This Morning.